Welcome to the JP8 Report. This is James Pierce with the JP8 Report today, episode 48.5. And so just explain that 48.5 is I already have a podcast queued up for episode 49. And as you know, episode 48, I was talking about Afghanistan, and then abruptly over Saturday and into Sunday, things changed immensely in Afghanistan. So I figured I needed to go one more step and do some more on a podcast. And so that's what this one is. The name of this one is This is Kabul, Not Saigon, Mr. Biden. Okay. So if you're not listening to the news, and there's a lot of people just signed off and didn't want to go back on, Afghanistan is under the control of the Taliban after 20 years. And the leader of the Taliban used to be in Gitmo, where he should have stayed, or worse. Okay. But this is an abrupt continuation of episode 48. So if you're looking at this one, I highly recommend that you go back and watch 48 and watch this one. Okay. Half of 48 deals with Afghanistan, and the other half deals with the border. And then this one right here deals with Afghanistan. Okay. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you'll see every one of them that come across to you, whether it be on Rumble or Podbean or YouTube. Rumble's the best, and so if you're watching me on YouTube and you don't have a Rumble account, go over to Rumble, establish an account, and subscribe to the JP8 Report. That easy. So I'll talk to you just for a few minutes today. We're going to start off with This is Kabul, not Saigon. So here's two pictures. You've probably seen this running around the internet a little bit. The difference between Saigon and Kabul is when Saigon fell in 1975, there was 2 years difference between the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Saigon, from South Vietnam before Saigon fell. There was a peace agreement with the North Vietnamese about South Vietnam, where it was a 1-for-1 exchange. One piece of equipment could be exchanged 1-for-1. We couldn't increase the number of bullets or armament that was going in the country. And then in early, I believe it was in the middle of '74, when they did the budget and stuff, they nixed the resupply of South Vietnam. So basically, they ran out of ways to be able to defend themselves. And then in April '75, the government fell. Now, look at the same picture on the bottom. That's Kabul. We still have troops there. We're in the midst of withdrawing from there. And in the course of like the last 5 or 6 days, it collapsed. It collapsed. Okay. There's no other way. What in the world happened? Okay. So, just so people would like to know, let's see. This is the whitehouse.gov website from a news conference that was on July 8th. I got 2 of these for you. Okay. 2 of them. The first one is, Mr. President, some Vietnamese veterans see echoes of their experience in this withdrawal from Afghanistan. Do you see any parallels between the withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam with some feeling? Mr. President, this is his response. None whatsoever, zero. What you had is you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy, 6 if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the South, the North Vietnamese army. They're 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 not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being airlifted off the roof of an embassy in the United States of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not comparable. What is that? What does that mean to you, Mr. President? I see Chinooks in over by our embassy in Afghanistan. Okay. Next one is um, the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable? And the president says, no, it's not. And he said, and then the press person says, why? And then the president says, because you, the Afghan troops, have 300 well equipped as any army in the world in an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable. So my question is, how was it inevitable? Why are there Taliban commanders in the presidential palace in Kabul? What happened to our greatly trained Afghan military that we trained? 300,000. That means they got Kalashnikovs, they got M4s, they got sniper rifles, they got our Humvees, they got our airplanes, they got our bombs, they got our intel now, probably. Where's all that equipment? I hope we got most of it out. But if you look at a picture on the news about people being in the presidential palace, I saw an awful lot of M4 carbines in that picture, which means they got our equipment. Okay? How did we let this happen? You know, I'm a combat veteran. I was in Afghanistan. I was in Iraq. I was in the first Gulf War. This is absolutely mind-boggling that we did not know that the Taliban were capable of overrunning the entire country in that amount of time. What is our intel capability assets doing? What are they briefing the president? Who's briefing him? Why weren't American soldiers put in the perimeter of Kabul to protect the city and the government of Afghanistan until we were able to transition out of there? Matter of fact, I heard the former vice chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I believe it's joint. Well, yeah, I believe so. General Jack Keane. He said, "Why didn't we do this in the wintertime to give the Afghan government plenty of time to reorganize and be prepared for the spring offensive against the Taliban? We did it now, while they're motivated and well armed and well supplied." It's like a big setup. I'm not trying to drive no conspiracy. What happened to defending our ally? I mean, you may draw the correlation between Saigon and Kabul. The Democrat Congress cut off funding for the South Vietnamese. And in the course of 2 years, it fell. This fell in a week. A week. This was like in 2001 when the Taliban fell. I guess they had a good center for lessons learned, huh? There's no reason, no way that government fell the way it did. You know, it all started, besides the humongous intelligence failure, and I would even fault some of the officers in our own military for the indecisive actions that they protected in advising the President of the United States, or he just chose not to listen to him. But a couple weeks ago, when Bagram was abandoned and they left it full of supplies, they just turned the lights off and left. Didn't even have the dignity of letting the Afghan commander there notice that we were leaving. We just left an open runway full of equipment, armaments, everything that could be used against us and be used against the Afghan army. And I guess the Taliban learned at that point in time that no matter what, they would be able to walk into Kabul with no problem. So this probably, if it was a Taliban plan, I guess when they marched into Bagram, they actually thought that they could march into Kabul. Same concept, with very limited opposition. Our officers are supposed to lead, okay? They're not supposed to be politicians or chief executive officers. They're supposed to be combat commanders and have their field grade officers and their senior NCOs train the junior NCOs and soldiers how to be an effective combat machine. And that should have been relayed over to the Afghans. I mean, we train soldiers and we fight like soldiers, okay? And we're just sitting there and watching Afghans just sit there and throw down their arms and march up to Taliban and then get executed. My youngest daughter is a Democrat, okay? I didn't tell her to do that. She just chose that on her own. And last night, she was like talking like she was an absolute Republican. So I'm telling you, if you're a liberal out there, you need to review your political stance. Because if my young daughter can start talking like a Republican, I ain't saying she is, but if she's starting to talk like one, how many people else out there are having the same kind of questions? Okay. Some of the stuff she was talking to me about was what about the women and the children in Afghanistan? Well, I tell you what, their rights are gone. If you're a woman in Afghanistan, I really hope you find your way out. I really do. Because the Sharia law is about to be re-implemented in that country, and you won't have any rights. You won't be able to put makeup on or dress the way you want. You won't be able to listen to music. You won't be able to go to school. You won't be able to hold a job. And we let this happen. We let it happen. We had the capability of helping Afghanistan, helping them march toward the future, whether we're there or not. Okay, we should have left the base in Jalabad open. We should have been, because that's where the Spec Ops place was. That's where the raid from Bin Laden originated from. I mean, the Taliban, if you didn't know, the Taliban's been in the country since 1994 when they overthrew the government, up until 2001 when we overthrew them, and now they're back. According to President Biden, there's only 75,000 soldiers in the Taliban army, and then 300,000 Afghan army. We probably resupplied that army for decades. And we can't trust them. I mean, yesterday it was put out that it's going to be an Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Split up just like the UAE is. They got in Kuwait. They got several different sheiks or whatever, that warlords that control different provinces, and together to make the country of Afghanistan. But just saying, the whole reason why we went there in the first place was retaliation for what happened in 2001. Okay, because 9/11 was planned even in Afghanistan with Al Qaeda, UBL. 10 years after UBL was 10 years after 9/11, UBL was killed in a raid. Okay, but everyone seems to forget what happened to Ahmed al-Zawahiri. Where is he at? Well, you know what? He survived. He's still alive. He's elderly. But we never got our hands on Muhammad Omar. He was the Taliban commander, okay, in Afghanistan when it fell. But Ahmed al-Zawahiri was the number 2 Al-Qaeda leader. He was right behind UBL. And after Afghanistan fell in 2001, he went into hiding. He has not been located. And now we are probably never going to be able to extract justice out of him. Ahmed al-Zawahiri back in the 80s founded Islamic Jihad in Egypt. And they kicked him out of that country. Now ask the people in Egypt and Israel what they feel about al-Zawahiri. They don't like him. They wish he would be dead. We do too. But we have not been able to locate and execute him. That's because that's what we need to do. So what do we do now? Let him be free for the rest of his life? Plan another attack on us? Whether it be here in the United States or anywhere in the world, against our soldiers, against civilians? 2,420 American soldiers to this date have been killed in Afghanistan. One of them was a friend of mine in 2005, Sergeant First Class John Morton. He was killed in southeast Afghanistan. Was his death in vain? Were the deaths of the 2,420 American soldiers in vain? I don't think so, but it sure feels like it. And you look at me, and you look at all the other tens of thousands of soldiers and Marines and airmen and sailors that all fought over there and died or came back changed. Like people you see, everyone's seen the movie Lone Survivor. You got Mike Murphy and Axe and Danny. They all died over there. And Marcus Luttrell, he survived. Were their deaths worth it? And they died in 2005, in the summer of 2005. Or the other 16 soldiers that died are military people, because we're all one team, going to rescue them. Or SEAL Team 6 that died in the mountains, or an alleged insider op that's never really been ever explained. How does Chinook carrying SEAL Team 6 go down in combat when nobody knew where it was except for a few select people? Were all of our people going to remember us, or are they going to remember how Kabul fell? We shall see at this point. But on another note, you're looking at Afghanistan at this point. If you are the people in Taiwan, and if you're the people in South Korea, or you're the people in the Ukraine, how do you feel at this point in time? Because the People's Republic of China consider Taiwan a rogue province. And we have a mutual defense treaty with Taiwan. So if they were ever attacked, we would come to their side. Are we? Will we? Do we have the gall to stand up side by side by the Taiwanese military and protect them and save them from the onslaught of the Chinese? What about South Korea? Seoul, if you didn't know, is within artillery striking distance of North Korea, and they have 1 million men on the border on the DMZ, and a very, very large amount of artillery pointing at the city of Seoul, South Korea. So if you're able to survive the first 30 minutes of the war with North Korea, could you depend on the United States government reinforcing South Korea and protecting them from the North Koreans? Would we? Will we? Do you trust the United States? Would you expect us, or would you, at this point in time, think it's a passing thought in Americans that it's not worth it? That we can't stand up with our treaties and agreements we made with other countries? How about the Ukraine? For like the last 6-7 years, Vladimir Putin, he went into the Crimea, occupied it and took it from the Ukrainians. We have never done anything about that. That should have been case point right there. Maybe that's what the Taliban were looking at. Oh, wow, they didn't go into the aid of the Ukrainians. There's still a large amount of Russian troops on that border, and there's Russian separatists inside that country. So what's to keep Russia from marching westward and occupying a full third, which they want, or maybe a half of the Ukraine, and annexing it to Russia? I mean, we don't have a treaty with them. But would you expect Americans to come, or NATO to come to your aid and protect you? Would you? Will they? After everything that's happened, in the last few days, what is the reputation in the United States? We have a 78-year-old man that's in the White House. Right now, he's up at Camp David. I saw a VTC of him yesterday in the Laurel office building in camp. He was all by himself. When I was stationed up there, yes, I was up there. President Bush always had people up there with him. And they were in the VTCs with him. How can you give sound advice to the President of the United States if you're not there with him? I mean, yeah, you got the VTC site. Okay. Either he needs to have his people that are working with him, or they all need to be in Washington, D.C. and not on vacation. I don't care how many weeks or months you work. This is a national security situation that needs to be worked out. How are you going to get those 80,000 people that are stranded in Afghanistan out of that country without them being summarily executed by the Taliban military? It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. This was, I'm one of them to say we spent too much time in Afghanistan. It was time for us to leave, but it's not when you leave, it's how you leave. Okay, I read a book back a long time ago, and it was called Red Army. It was written by Lieutenant Colonel. Oh man, I can't remember. Okay, so the book Red Army was written about a hypothetical World War III war in Europe. The Soviets, they got lucky, and they attacked the West, and within 72 hours, I think it was 72 hours, occupied enough of West Germany that Germany capitulated. They surrendered. And part of the surrender agreement was move all forces into France and immediately leave Germany. So the American forces in the book, okay, as they were watching and withdrawing, they would notice that the American tanks, as they were withdrawing, would not turn their weapons toward France and withdraw. They left their weapons pointed toward the Soviets, even though they were beat. I mean, this is hypothetical. I don't believe it ever happened like that. Okay? Because, for one, Fulda would be the world's largest cemetery if there was ever an attack in Western Germany in the 80s. Okay? A lot of us Americans feel like that. We're prideful. We know what needs to be done, but we are decisive in nature, and you can't stick your head in the sand and not do nothing. You have to make it happen. There are people depending on us. You got to properly plan and execute. You can't be taken by surprise on an action that where are your second and third order effects. You have plan for this plan, for this plan, for this plan. I think the senior military leadership and intel community failed the president. Or he just chose not to do anything and said, let it be. They can take care of themselves, knowing that this was going to happen. Did my and the other soldiers that died, did they die in vain, or did we serve in vain over there? I mean, I was there 13 months. 13 months. And now it's for nothing. Okay. That's all I'm going to talk about today. And so I'm going to sign off like this, and I may keep this up for a minute before I sign off. Because this is not the flip side. This is the real side. This is Kabul, not Saigon, Mr. Biden. And our country deserves a whole lot more than what you just gave us. So you need to buck up and do something. This is crazy. This is James Pierce from the JP8 Report. I'm out.